Well, at the risk of using one of those words that's too risque for a middle grade podcast, have you been seduced by writing for children, or do you foresee a time when you might go back and maybe not write another memoir, unless a sequel's worth of really interesting things have happened to you since that are going to make for a wonderful second memoir? Do you see yourself going back to, or do you plan
So,
that far in advance? I mean, I know you've got the multiple projects listed on your website.
well, I have a book of short stories for adults that's also illustrated, oddly enough. And I've got a bunch of stories that I've never sent out. I've had a couple published, but in literary journals. So I have a book of short stories that I'd really like to finish. It's called Pilgrims and Penitents, and so that's for adults. I've got a book of poetry that I have yet to finish. That's for adults. I've got I have I didn't think I'd ever write another nonfiction book again, but I have a really cool idea that's kind of it would involve a road trip and a possible podcast and it's a fun sort of um it's a really fun nonfiction idea that I might pursue at some point. But the thing that I would love to conquer the most is something that I've wanted to do since I was a little kid, and it's the hardest thing in the world, and it makes the least amount of money. So I'd have to have a time when I could actually take a year and work on something and not have a bunch of other deadlines. I really want to do a picture book, and I want to draw it, and I have about five projects that I've started, but I just need time to focus and really work on. And I think I think doing picture books is the hardest thing of all because it's so minimalist, and you have to really have the pictures, the images drive the story, and so that I don't know. I have this memory when I was 5 years old, and we were all told to go into the gymnasium where the big stage was in our little school. And I sat cross-legged on the floor with all the other kids. And on stage, this author illustrator, he came on stage. He set up a big easel. He had this huge pad of paper, and he started telling a story and drawing these animals, and told the story and drew and flipped back each page. And I sat there and I looked at him and I thought, I want to do that someday. So I'm still waiting for that moment when I can actually focus on that. So
I'm
that
still hoping you're going to get a horse and some music and an art pad and be that disc jockey that you wanted to
I
be.
know. My husband and I started a venture called North of Radio, and this is before the podcast craze. And I wrote a bunch, wrote an ep, and I wrote and recorded quite a few episodes. And we've actually, he does sound design and composes, and he's a drummer, and so we've actually put a couple things together. But then it's so time consuming. The there are just us out there, and you really, as you kind of have to keep up with it and do it on a regular basis. You can't just go, um, oops, you can't just go like, maybe I'll broadcast my thing today and then not do anything for another year. I mean, you sort of have to do it on a regular basis, and um, and it's incredibly hard work. I know that you work really hard at this. I am so. Um, I don't know if I don't know. That's something that's definitely for adults, and I don't know if we'll end up doing that, or I'll turn those little stories into some other nonfiction thing. I don't know. Um, Part of what I decide to do sometimes has to do with my conversation with my agent, and it also depends on where I am financially. So there's that. Um, I mean, I wrote a whole other nonfiction book after the Memory Palace because I knew I could get a good deal with Simon and Schuster. I wrote this 400-page book, I liked the idea. I was so bored with the writing. I had no desire to write more about myself, and the editor there wanted me to put more of myself in it, in this idea that I had. And I just sent that to my agent, and I sent her little snippets of my fiction. The book was called The Book of Wonder, and it was about the history of wonder in the age of extinction. It's a great idea, but my agent left a message saying, "I get it now. You've been trying to write about wonder when your fiction is wonder. You should do whatever you want to do." And so that's part of how we decide things, like whatever I feel like I need to write at that moment, that sort of keeps me up at night. If something doesn't keep me up at night, if I'm not constantly thinking about it, then I'm just not going to be passionate about it. So
makes sense.
So we'll see. But I definitely